Here we are again in the sun for another little sunny stroll, getting some fresh air, getting some oxygen, and something that I have been contemplating actually after a conversation with a friend of mine who's also in her own chronic healing journey. But it was really interesting because our conversation highlighted something that I think is actually a bigger and more important point than we often give it credit for. And that is oversimplistically thinking. Like, it was really funny. We were having a conversation around like just ancestral healing stuff. But I feel like this is a theme that I see a lot in the healing world. And I think sometimes we confuse taking responsibility for our own stuff and our own process. And I think we confuse that with everything being our fault. And, like, there's this belief in not just the spiritual community, but like in religion. And it's something that I see, and it's a huge red flag for me, because lately, as I have been in my own process of doing a lot of my own family ancestral related healing work, it has been a lot of that healing work has had to do with really both not just unhealthy dynamics and trauma, but also coercion and cult-like themes. And it's taken me on a journey of discovery. So the conversation that we had really illuminated for me as well, like a lot of the way that we simplify and victim blame when it comes to victims of traumatic experiences, and particularly victims of repeated trauma, right? So, like, for example, I'll give you guys a hard example. Like, there's this, belief that if you aren't healed, that somehow it's because it's like on you, because like you've done something in like a past life or a current life, or like you're letting it happen essentially. And I think that we need to be careful, because I think sometimes when we have a bit of a victim consciousness, it's easy to blame others and want them to take responsibility. And that's a natural response. Like, if you have been through something where you were a victim of a crime, like you have been assaulted or abused, especially if it's like repeated, right? We like intrinsically take on this idea that somehow we are responsible and there's something we can do about the behavior, like somehow we've caused that behavior. And a lot of people misunderstand this and oversimplify, right? It's kind of like, you're overcomplicating it, or you're overthinking it, or, and I think this is where, like, when it comes to like, especially like CPSD, where things have been repeated and these patterns, like what a lot of people don't understand is like I do not subscribe to this idea that like if you have been in an abusive situation, that somehow like you're responsible for the abuse. Like, that's so fucked up in so many ways. Like, and I think sometimes like people say, well, people don't leave, like these different situations, but it's actually so much more complex. There's so many other things that are happening that really are not well understood, and it's easy to oversimplify, right? And so what I wanted to sit with, because like, what's the difference between taking responsibility for yourself And at the same time, like, sitting with the complexity that is the fact that what has gotten us to where we are in terms of whether it's complex trauma or chronic disease, chronic illness, like, what's gotten here is, like, we take some responsibility in role of where and what we do with it now, right? Like, I can't use like a traumatic past to make an excuse for being a shitty person now, right? Like, this is the line of responsibility. Like, I think this is where sometimes we can use it as an excuse for our behavior, right? And there is some truth to it linked to our behavior, right? But the thing is that, like, for me, the only thing that I am responsible for is me, right? Because the truth of the situation is I don't have any control over how other people are treating me, right? Like, especially when you think of like children, right? Like, children are born into horrific situations around the world every day. And it's not because they have shitty past life trauma. I'm sorry. But like, an innocent being, does not matter what happened in the past. It doesn't matter all that things, right? Like, this idea that an innocent being deserves the mistreatment and abuse of being born into abusive family, that is like one of the most fucked up things that I've heard. And it's something that is like a pervasive belief, right? It's like, oh, if you're the problem, if you're not doing it right, this is constantly happening to you, well, you must be the problem. But the problem with that kind of logic, that kind of thinking, is it actually completely negates how biologically we develop, right? Like, as a child and as an infant, like, we automatically assume that if something is wrong and we're not getting our needs met, that is our fault, right? This is kind of a default to how children perceive the world, which is one of the reasons why when children grow up in really fucked up situations and abusive situations, they internalize a belief that they caused the problems. And then that internalization often ends up in manifesting in chronic illness and stuff. But the belief, like, reinforcing that belief that they're the ones causing, like, they're the problem, is actually not dealing with the truth of the matter, which is they were never the problem, right? Like, like, so unlearning that is really difficult. And then at the same time, when you have all of these different religious systems and cults and people who are it's just oversimplistic thinking. The thing is that, yes, we can overcomplicate things that are simple. However, the way that life moves and works is not simple. It's not black and white. It is nuanced. It's complex. It's not the same for every single person. We can take a similar perspective, right, of understanding two different people, but we're going to be met with different experiences. We're going to be met with different responses, right? So anyway, this is what I have been thinking about. And I think the reason why it kind of bothers me is that I think it's a distraction. This is the other thing, right? Like, when we focus on, okay, well, if it's my fault, and I think this is where some people find empowerment in this. They're like, well, if it's my fault, I'm the problem, then I have to, just work harder, right? And I'm, there's something I can do about it. I now have agency and control. But it's false agency and control, because we don't have control over other people. And there are really shitty humans in this world. There are. They just are. Who have no interest in being a good person. They have no interest in treating other people with respect. Like, they just don't. And some people actually like enjoy fucking up shit and, power control. And they like literally, I mean, this is why we have a full spectrum, right? And by just assuming that it's always our fault, it's actually not taking responsibility. It's refusing to see the honest truth about the situation is that the person is not healthy, right? So we need to change the way that we allow those people to interact with us. And in some cases, it might mean that we might have to remove ourselves completely from their lives and situations, right? And and that their behavior is not our responsibility, right? It's not our responsibility to show them the light. It's not our responsibility to fix them, right? And it's not our responsibility. Keep on saying this over and over. It's not our responsibility, because it's not. What is our responsibility, right? What is our responsibility is if there's something that there's some patterning for myself, like for example, if you have been in, like childhood stuff where you have, let's call it relational trauma, right? My responsibility to myself is to actually learn what healthy relational experiences are, right? That's my responsibility, because that improves my experience in my life, and it improves my experience in my relationships. It's not going to fix the relationships where the other party has no interest, right, in having a mutual thing, right? So I think this is where it's like, yes, like coming back to chronic illness, it's like, I didn't ask for this. Nobody asked for this shit. And I think it's important to like have some awareness and understanding. I feel like I talked about this yesterday a little bit. It's like, it's important to like acknowledge like with real like honesty. Like it's important to acknowledge the whole like breadth of the truth of the situation. And it's important to acknowledge like, what part am I playing right now in supporting or like hyper focusing on the pieces that maybe are not the most helpful, right? Like what can I do in this moment, right? Like where does my responsibility lie, right? Because I think that there's a difference between like having expectations that other people will save us, and there's a difference of having just some understanding of what we actually do have agency over, and also what our limits are, what we're not responsible for. I think that's just as important as, it's just as important to understand where responsibility lies. That's not the same as blaming, right? I want to be clear, like it's all your fault and I had no part in this. That's not what I'm saying. But it is really important to see where other people's responsibilities lie so that we don't take them on. Because this is the thing, if you have this kind of patterning, we have the tendency to take on other people's work for them. And that's not healthy. And that directly contributes to a lot of the patterning that is part of chronic illness. So, let's be discerning. And also remember that for me, like, whenever I hear something that is oversimplified, or there's a really simple answer and people tell me that I'm overcomplicating something that I just know is true. Like, and not true because it's a belief that I've held. It's like, this is just like something that I've been curious about for a long time and I've been exploring from different angles. If you in your own direct experience have been exploring things in different ways, like, you just have to honor what you understand to be true for you, right? Because it's different. Like, all our experiences matter and all our perspectives matter. And there is no like one right way. And it's not our fault. Having chronic illness does not mean that we did something in a karma or we're carrying the burden karmas of, like, it is more complex than that. It's more nuanced than that. And I actually don't think that acknowledging the complexity and nuance is a hindrance to healing. I actually think that it's a helpfulness to healing, because I think one of the hindrances is this black and white either or oversimplistic thinking. I actually think that that's what prevents us. Not saying that we can't have, like, I'm also not saying that it's like supposed to be a long road, because I myself have experienced pretty spontaneous going into remission for 8 years where I was really, really well. And it was kind of spontaneous. It was very simple, yet not simple, right? Like, it's not just like a simple trick where you just flip on a switch. It's not that simple, right? But yes, it can happen. There is hope. And it can definitely, I've definitely had that experience. So I know that's real and true. And at the same time, it's not like, oh, if I just do this cleansing ritual, like, I'll be better. And then if I didn't, if I'm not better, I just didn't do the ritual right. Like, that is very oversimplistic thinking that's just not rooted in or grounded in any kind of reality, you know? Anyway, that's my musings for the day. It's been almost 2 weeks that I've gone into this fun little period. I'm just grateful that I can get outside, to be quite honest. And yeah, I've felt humbled in a lot of ways, which is really mentally challenging. It's hard. And I also want to consciously make space for the hard and also the hopefulness. I think that both are important. So yeah, I've been doing a little bit of just getting out in the sun when the sun's shining, breathing the air deeply as I can, and just doing some nervous system work at home, constructive rest. I'm coming back to humming, which is, if you're familiar with continuum movement, something that I've been practicing for many years, and I kind of come back to sounding and doing vibrations, which I just find really, like, nourishing. So, simple, nourishing practices. We're in the mystery. We are in the mystery. Ciao for now.